Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining the panel. Thanks everyone for attending Thai DC's panel today. We have, I'm really looking forward to the panel. I know um, the people here, they've been leaders in the community, supporters of the local entrepreneurial ecosystem and of Thai DC for many years. And I really look forward to understanding more about the organizations they represent and the topic for today, which is to me a very interesting topic. Essentially, all businesses go through capital needs, and the right amount of capital at the right time is required to drive the business to greater heights. But types of capital are different, and what type of capital you may need today may not be the same that you may need a couple of years from now. So we'll explore kind of different funding options that are available, whether it is government grant, equity funding, debt, receivables funding, and go through various options that may be applicable for you and right for you at different stages of kind of growth of your business. So we have with us April, who's the managing director of Hercules Capital, Tom Weithman, managing director of CIT GAAP Funds, Henry Ahn, who's a program director at NSF for the SBIR program, Ashish Khosla, who's the senior vice president at Bank of America. So we have people representing different types of capital here. And I'd like to just start off by having each one of the panelists introduce themselves and the financing programs that they offer to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. April, can we start with you?
Sure. Sorry. Many Zooms as we've been on, I still have to take a minute to unmute. So I represent the non-bank debt community in a sense. Ashish, of course, will talk about bank debt. Hercules Capital is a publicly traded entity called a Business Development Corporation, which is a unique financial entity created by the federal government some years ago. For those of you who spend time with financing, it's a lot like a REIT in the sense that we make, actually Hercules makes very large loans to venture-backed and PE-backed companies, starting at about $10 million, going up to $150 million. What's unique about our business is virtually everybody we do business with does have outside equity. So it means that we do certainly have some companies that have heavy duty GovCon, but by and large, our clients are mostly people who are selling to the private market.
Henry.
Sure, thank you. So my name's Henry Ahn. I'm with the National Science Foundation. I'm with the SBIR STTR program. And as most of you know, NSF is primarily a funding agency. And our SBIR STTR program is a funding program within NSF with an annual budget of roughly $200 million. And the important thing to keep in mind is that NSF, I mean, there is that heavy emphasis of funding innovative technologies with commercial potential. And each agency does different things. Even within the SBIR program, some of the things that we believe are important will be a little different. So for example, I work with many biomedical technologies and medical devices companies. And so many of the companies that I work with also do look into places like NIH and DOD. And their requirements for a phase 1 proposal is very different from NSF. So the important thing is just making sure to go through the solicitation guideline very carefully. And our website, seedfund.nsf.gov, does provide a lot of details and including a little timeline of all the activities that companies should be involved with. The first step in the process is submitting a project pitch, and that's where the interaction starts. And as always, if companies do have questions, they can reach out to us, email us directly. We'd be more than happy to connect and answer all the questions that you may have. Phase one can go up to $256,000 here at NSF, and phase one can go up to 256K. Phase two can go up to $1 million, and there are other supplemental funding programs within phase two program. So when it's all said and done, it could be roughly just under $2 million. And our hope is that companies will be able to de-risk their technology sufficiently so that they can continue to grow beyond the grant money that we can provide. One important difference between NSF comparing to other SBIR programs through other agencies is that we're more or less technology agnostic. So we do fund just about all different types of technologies, but they have to be innovative. And so that's the main difference. And for that reason, we do see a lot of different types of companies come our way. But at the same time, we do, because our goal is to help companies de-risk the technology to continue to grow, and we're not going to be able to do anything with the technology or the data that the company may generate. So we do put a lot of emphasis, even for a phase one applicant, on being able to come in with some significant information on the commercial side, on the business side. So the commercialization plan has to be, in many cases, more thorough than many other agencies that companies may have to be involved with. So those are all the basics, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions that people may have along the way. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry.
Yep.
Tom? Oh, you're off mute now.
There we go. Thank you, Raj. Delighted to be here today. Thanks for having me, and great to be on this wonderful panel on a very important topic of discussion. With CIT GAAP Funds, we are an equity investor, and to be specific, a seed stage equity investor. So we are on the front end of the funding chain once companies make a decision to take equity investment as opposed to grant money or debt from banks. We're an atypical venture fund formation in that we are operating element of CIT, the Center for Innovative Technology, a Virginia state-funded nonprofit. We've had our fund going for about 15 years and invest in seed stage companies in tech, in life science, and in clean tech. We make small dollar investments. We consider ourselves providers of catalytic capital. We'll put in 100,000 or 200,000 at the seed stage, capping out at 500K into any individual company, in anticipation of leveraging other private capital to come in alongside of us or downstream of us. But we are, again, a pure seed stage player with small dollars to deploy. We're huge believers in the SBIR program, so delighted to see Henry here, and we have a gentleman on our staff that helps align companies with which we work with sources of non-dilutive capital from the federal government, like the SBIR and STTR programs. Apart from our equity investment program, we also have a couple of grant programs at CIT to encourage the commercialization of research from institutions, and we've just launched another grant fund to help fund entrepreneurial infrastructure around the Commonwealth of Virginia. So think accelerators, maybe helping to underwrite the costs of a new seed fund and things like that. We've had our equity investment program, and that's primarily what I'll talk about today, going for about 15 years. We've invested in, I think, almost 240 seed stage companies around the Commonwealth, and have seen a large number of them go on to additional downstream financing, such that for every dollar of Virginia money we've been able to put out, we've attracted about $36 or $37 of private capital. That's exclusive of any grant money we bring in, private capital onto the balance sheets of those companies. Across the life of our very broad and varied portfolio, that translates into about $1 billion of capital onto the balance sheets of these companies, much of it from outside of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So the good outcomes for Virginia, good outcomes for Virginia's entrepreneurs. Along the way, we started up a couple of other funding vehicles. In the fall of 2013, myself and a couple of other people launched the Mach 37 Cyber Accelerator. Through that, we helped to give birth to about 70 new startups in the cybersecurity space. CIT divested itself of its interest in Mach 37 just this past summer. And then in spring of 2018, we started the Virginia Founders Fund. We took about $3 million of returns that we had generated through our flagship CIT GAAP Fund program and put it in the special fund to shine a spotlight on and make investments in entrepreneurs arising from Virginia's traditionally underserved communities. And we define that both geographically and demographically. We've made about 30 investments through that fund as well. So we consider ourselves that we invest for impact and invest for return, and that we provide catalytic money in hopes of bringing other private money on board.
Thanks, Tom. And I also have to mention Robert Brook from CIT, who said I should tell people that there are programs for helping people apply for the SBIR. So CIT.org has more details. Ashish, please.
Thank you, Rajesh, and thank you, Ty. I really appreciate this opportunity to be a part of this esteemed panel. And I really want to thank the many participants today. I know some of them are present Bank of America clients, so thank you so much. And frankly, the last 2 days and going on today, it's been a fabulous 3 days so far. The level of speakers and the information that Ty has provided I think it's fantastic. So in my role, I'm currently the market executive at Bank of America. The commercial banking team at Bank of America serves mid-sized companies by delivering strategic financial advice and solutions to help companies grow. Our dedicated team of relationship managers connects with clients to deliver a wide range of services, including credit, cash management, foreign exchange, different finance, merchant services, international banking needs, employer services, such as employee banking and 401k solutions. And it's really important for us to note that we're delivering on this responsible growth with a strong focus on environmental, social, and governance, ESG leadership. This really enables us to serve clients, deliver long-term value through sustainable results to our shareholders, and it really addresses some of society's greatest challenges today. Through our commitment to ESG principles, we build trust and credibility as a company that people want to work for, invest in, and do business with. As a couple of my colleagues alluded to, in essence, we are a debt provider. Now, debt comes in many different forms, whether it's a working capital line to finance your receivables, whether it's for property, plant, and equipment, CapEx needs, whether it's simply perhaps a recapitalization, a dividend recap to really take some chips off the table. So certainly, as the conversation continues, we'll explore that a bit further. But in essence, we're here to serve your needs from every aspect in banking. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashish. And if people have questions, please ask your questions on the chat. Happy to answer those. Okay, so my name is Rajesh Rai. I've been investing in early stage companies for many years now. And so if there is a early stage company with a technology innovation, they go to CIT, ask them for help on their SBIR program, and then they go to Henry. Henry helps with the SBIR program, and then they come back to CIT, get some equity funding. Then they go to April, and April helps them with venture debt, and they go past a certain stage, and Ashish has his debt capital. So we are a full service firm here on this panel. So how do businesses decide on kind of what capital is appropriate for them? So I'll ask April to maybe start off, and anyone else who has thoughts on it, please chime in.
Interestingly, after I heard Ashish acknowledge Ty, I realized I had forgotten to say that when I became a banker in 1998, my very first client was a company started by two Ty members. So I have very fond memories and thoughts of Ty, and I'm delighted to be here. So when I started as a banker, I worked really with early stage companies. I was hired by a small California bank that was ultimately acquired by Comerica, and I ran the Comerica Mid-Atlantic practice for 10 years. What we basically did is lend money based on a company's equity support. So you go out and you raise You raise money from Tom, you raise money from Henry, and by the time you get to the point where you've raised $3 or $4 million, you can probably leverage 25% of that or a little more in debt that allows you to extend the period. Watching my clients raise money is really fascinating, because I think people waste a lot of time by not doing their homework on these companies' websites. Hercules does has a very unique niche. We do loans to companies that have typically raised 3 or 4 rounds of equity. They've solved the product problem, they've solved the market problem, and what they're financing is growing the sales, basically, execution. But every day I get emails for people wanting to know if I want to invest in their seed round. If you read the first 2 lines in our website, you would know that was not the case. And I think if you decide you want to raise professional equity, the first thing you do is homework on who the people are that are investing in that area. We're very lucky in this region. We have 8 or 10 angel funds, basically seed funds, including Tom and Henry's operations, but privately held ones. There are one, for example, Data Tribe, does basically nothing but SaaS, and a lot of it in cyber. So if you're going to create a CRM product, they're not the right people. There's somebody else who might be the right person. But I think the first thing is to figure out whether your product or service is fundable from a venture standpoint, and then to really look for the funds that know the space that you're in. Is that helpful?
Anyone else? Same question.
Yeah, Raj, I'll add to that. April makes a great point in terms of clients perhaps not doing their homework. And we truly like to take an advisory approach when we are having interactions with clients, and we really encourage them to think of us as an extension of their board and their management team, right? To really have candid dialogue and leaving emotions aside, and really sitting down and asking them, what is the true need in terms of the sources and uses of capital? Is this going to be a short-term need, a long-term need? Is it for growth? Is it for capital expenditures? And at the end of the day, we want to create a scalable and a structure, right? A scalable structure that can support sustainable growth. I think that's the key. Oftentimes you'll hear in just loose talk that, oh, my bank turned me down. Trust me, we only make money if we do loans. So we want to do every transaction that's feasible. But I think, as April made a great point, you have to make sure you're talking to the right audience. And we're glad to help in that respect, and having that dialogue, saying, okay, perhaps we may not be the right fit, but perhaps April is, or Henry is, or Tom is, or maybe perhaps yourself.
I'll jump in here, Raj. I think there are really, a handful of determinants that an entrepreneur needs to think about when they go to raise capital to make sure they're opening the right door, or at least knocking on the right door. And that it runs to the type of business, and it runs to the developmental stage of the business. And then, finally, I think it runs to the characteristics of the entrepreneur themselves and their readiness to take on various types of capital, because various types of capital entail very, very different sorts of obligations. And coming at it from an equity standpoint, we are looking for a business that is essentially scalable. We're on the front end of things with our seed investment, but we're looking for the same types of indicators that downstream equity investors, angel investors, venture funds are going to look for in terms of scalability. That generally sends us down the road of a product versus a service orientation, simply by nature of the scalability. We're looking for things that are going to grow rapidly in rapidly growing markets, taking advantage of a trend. We're looking for sustainable competitive advantage that is often born of, if not rooted in IP, then something that is sustainable from a head start perspective, or just simply a first mover advantage, either on technology development or market capture. And in terms of developmental stage of the business, you've got to think through that as well, because if you're going after equity, you are giving up a piece of your company. And how much you want to give up, or you're willing to give up, and have to give up, is going to be a function of the developmental stage, how much traction you have in the marketplace. It's going to be harder to raise equity if you're If you have very few indicators of market receptivity, if you have revenue and some numbers that reflect your growth, it's going to be relatively easier, and you're going to maybe and that's going to have an impact on valuation and the terms of the deal. And finally, you've got to look at yourself and see what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to do. There are entrepreneurs that don't need to raise outside capital and may not desire to raise outside capital. Others need it and are willing to take that on. And you've got to ask yourself in terms of equity if you are willing to take on a partner, an additional owner in the business, because once we make an investment, we're not going away anytime soon. We are with you a long time until the business becomes liquid in one form or another. So these are some of the factors that I think that you've got to weigh, and some of the kind of diagnostics we go through as we speak with first-time entrepreneurs.
If I may jump in, so I think those are really great points about the stage of development. Those are certainly important. One thing that's really important, I think, for the company, I mean, as April indicated, doing some homework initially, that's going to be important. And after doing some initial homework, reach out to everyone that they believe is in the right space, and if not, they'll tell you. And companies don't typically know where the money will come from. Even within the SBIR realm, I get calls from companies and say, hey, we're thinking of submitting a proposal. I don't know whether to submit to NIH or NSF or DOD. If the topics are out there, because the requirements are a little different with NIH and DOD, they have to have the topic fit before they can submit. If the fit is there, why not apply to all of them? They don't know where the money will come from. In the best case scenario, if they get funded by all, they have to choose one over the other, but then they have options. So I think at this stage, SBIR tends to come in really early, especially NSF. We do put heavy emphasis on funding early stage companies. So many are startups, and I believe something like over 90% of the companies have never received even a phase 2 SBIR proposal from any agency that are receiving NSF phase 1 for the first time. So we do put heavy emphasis on these companies receiving funding for the first time. So we do often have this dialogue if a company has been in existence for a long time, and if they have some significant revenue or have raised significant amount of money, why are they coming to us for $256,000 of their phase 1 project? So it may kind of look like it's going backward. I've had companies that actually go through even Series B financing of raising over $10 million trying to submit a phase 1 project. And why is this being sought at this particular point in time? So all those things need to be considered. But I think once the company does the initial work and start the dialogue, and any questions they may have, they can always reach out to us with their questions. We'd be more than happy to provide all the answers that they need. And I think having more, reaching out to more people and having more conversation with more people will probably give them a better sense as to which path might be the best way, or maybe there are multiple paths, and so making the best decision for themselves will probably be a lot easier after having all the different types of information from different people that are in the field.
Thanks, Henry. I wanted to ask this question at the end, but you kind of brought it up. How do people contact you? What's the best way for people to reach everyone on this panel? Starting with you, Henry.
Sure. Yeah. So with us, all of our contact information is on our website. seedfund.nsf.gov is our SBIR homepage. And if you click on contacts, all of our contact information is there, including the topics that we handle. And the best way is to initially send an email with initial questions. But if they're thinking about submitting a proposal, they don't even have to tell us that they're about to do this. So there's a process with submitting a project pitch. So the project pitch should be submitted first, and the companies will hear back within 3 weeks. And after the company hears back, they'll know exactly who to reach out to, because whoever will be handling that topic will be getting back to that company. So having that information If they have some additional questions, they can reach out to us directly, whoever that may be. That person will be handling that particular their proposal throughout the whole review process. So just email us, and if needed, we do get on the phone to have additional discussions. Sometimes we refer people to our website, some of the webinars that may be coming up. But the submitting project pitch is the first step. But at any point, even prior to submitting a project pitch, if they are not quite sure about a certain aspect of our program, just email us. That will be the best way.
So that's seedfund.nsf.gov, right?
Yes.
Okay. We have April's email there too. Thanks. So Ashish, if you can talk to this question, which is,
Sure.
what should people do? What's the best way for people to approach you? Let's assume there is a fit, right? What's the best way for people to engage with you, and what's not the right way? Mistakes that people make. So how can people give themselves the best chance to work with you?
It's a great question. I think preparedness, right? Having a full financial package and really putting the emotions aside and having that candid dialogue, right? Oftentimes, people are, this is their baby. They started it from inception, and they're so close to it and they're geniuses in their domain. But oftentimes we see that there's no concept of cash flow and EBITDA. And trying to get a owner to understand that concept sometimes can be rather difficult. But I think if they come in with an open mind and are willing to have that conversation where they want to really leverage our expertise and experience, it'll be really beneficial. For example, Rajesh, I'll share with you, we have a proprietary tool called Peer Profiler. It uses the bank's database of thousands of clients. And if you were to come to me, and if let's say your company is a certain NICS code and a certain sales size, we can share benchmarking information with you, which will be really useful for your company for future growth and really seeing how you compare in terms of the metrics. And oftentimes, this may sound silly, we get financial statements, we get a balance sheet that doesn't reconcile. So you're coming to a financial institution seeking, millions in debt financing, and your financial house is not in order. So having quality financials, and to those out in the audience who may be with a CPA firm, I'll do a quick plug for my CPA partners. Please make sure that you have a great CPA partner and that you have invested in a CFO. Oftentimes you'll see a CEO is wearing multiple hats. He's the CEO, the CTO, and the CFO. And that doesn't work. That model does not work. So I think really to give your company the best chance, you have to make that investment into your financial platform and having a good quality set of financials and really understanding what those financials mean will really increase your chances. And I think just to take another second in terms of how to get in touch, I'll do a quick plug for TIE. If you go to the main event page on the left-hand side, there are all the sponsors. If you click on the sponsors, you'll have our contact information. My phone number is listed there along with my email address. Additionally, you can look us up on LinkedIn as well. And I think Rajesh or Jennifer may be putting up our email addresses throughout as well. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Ashish. April, same question. How do people have to present themselves? How do they make themselves attractive to you? And what kind of ticks you off?
Do what Ashish said. No, it depends on the stage of the company, but it's really important to be able to explain the financials of the company. We need to have a cap table. We need to see your projections for the next couple of years. But it sometimes surprises me to Ashish's point that people are juggling what to invest in, and so they don't invest in financial infrastructure until they're at a point where they think what they want to raise money. The only thing that Ashish didn't say is the other way. Financial institutions, whether they're banks or not banks like us, do not do surprises well. Don't surprise your banker. If we had a client that I just called to check in with, And he said, I'm so glad you called. I think we might have a problem with our fourth quarter numbers. This was in the third quarter. This is a great time. Call me, tell me what you see, and I can adjust. We can, I mean, you know, we know people miss their numbers, but you don't want to tell me at the after that you're supposed to, typically you're supposed to turn in your financials 30 days after the end of the quarter. That's not when I want to hear that you're going to miss your numbers. In our world, there are three kinds of risks when you're lending money, or for that matter, investing money. There's product risk, there's market risk, and there's execution risk. I find it easiest to work with companies who can tell me where they are on those three risk profiles and how they are addressing them. Where we are, because we're very late stage, typically we want to see the product risk has been eliminated largely because they've got people buying the product. The market risk has obviously been addressed because they build a product for a big market, a big, what we call TAM, total addressable market. What we're looking to underwrite is typically execution, decision to add some a sales team, maybe to buy a tuck-in acquisition, maybe to do a recap, but basically to execute on the overall strategy. So first you have to be able to explain the strategy, explain the product, and how you're going to meet it. And those are the kinds of questions backed up by good numbers, makes it easier for us to tell you whether you're a fit. In my case, I typically try to send people to somebody else if they're not a fit for us, because one of the things that's happened, and those of you who read the journal know, the private debt market has just exploded. So there are people who will underwrite and lend you money to do almost anything, including go to the moon.
Literally.
Literally.
Yeah. So the other thing I kind of wanted to say is, people are connected. I mean, just like here, people are connected. So if you can ask people for references, right? If it's not a fit, you can ask for people for references for, okay, so this doesn't work for you. Can you refer me to somebody else? So that's one more thing which
actually, to that point, Rajesh, the overall question of what's the best way to approach any one of us is by somebody who knows you, someone who is, I use LinkedIn all the time. I go to the, I go and see who, if I'm trying to get an introduction to a company, I go look and see if there's anybody in the CFO. If I don't know the CFO, is there anybody in the CFO's network that I can reach, that I know, and I can ask them to make an introduction for me? Because for all of us, particularly those of you who are trying to raise equity, the best way to raise equity is to get a reference from somebody who knows the investor. Otherwise it's going to be really hard to get through the 500 emails this guy gets or gal gets in a week.
Well, I just think that's key. And April, I love the product market and execution. I might have said product market and people, because ultimately we are paying on people. And if you think about how you get to know someone, there's no perfect substitute for knowing someone over an extended period of time. We don't always have that luxury. So how does that knowledge base, or how does that information base about somebody get formulated in a faster method? Well, ultimately it's through references. It's through what they've done in their background and your ability to relatively rapidly, even over a period of several months, to ascertain whether this person is a good bet and a solid citizen and someone that you want to invest in. It's trickier maybe for us in some ways, because a lot of people that we see are not repeat entrepreneurs. They don't have an entrepreneurial track record, so we look for other sorts of proxies. And maybe on the flip side of the coin, the biggest turnoff we have, or the biggest thing that for me is a showstopper, is any hint of misrepresentation of anything. You want to be dealing with people who are forthright and honest.
Yeah, I think one of the 4 C's of credit is character. Whether it's debt financing or equity, that plays a key part in our decisions. Character is integral to, I think, any decision we make, and having that trust is the key. I think great point.
Henry, any thoughts?
Yeah,
How
I
do
think
companies make themselves attractive to NSF?
Yeah, I mean, for us, because most of the companies that we see are so early that they don't have a full team yet at this stage, and most of them are just getting started, so they don't even have a projection to work with. What's important is when they go through the proposal, the proposal, it's really important to follow the solicitation guideline very carefully. And we understand the team may not be complete at this stage, but they should really have some advisors that they're working with the appropriate background to provide them with the guidance. We understand that they will make mistakes along the way. And some people might say, hey, who cares as long as we're successful at the end, as long as they're successful. That's true, but if we don't have enough money for the company to make all the mistakes along the way and be successful. So we want to, in some ways, see that the company has a plan to minimize some of those mistakes. So by having advisors who are familiar with commercializing technologies within that space, maybe people that are familiar with the regulatory path, and even the technology too. Usually with most of the companies that I see, inventors themselves are involved. So technically they're fairly strong, but if they have some aspect that they still have to understand, whether it's on the clinical side or the engineering side, they really need to think about bringing people, probably not as full-time employees at this point, but at least as advisors, so that they can show that they have all these people that they're working with, and they are receiving proper guidance to get to that next step. And maybe by the time they get to phase 2, they will have maybe a bit more money to bring some of these people on board full time. But there has to be some really good plan that people do believe in. And I do understand that for most of the investors, the team is really important. For us, we understand that they may not have a complete team, but please have advisors, have other people to work with. And if they have a proposal that they've been working on for a long time, none of us, including my reviewers, don't have the same ability of seeing 1 or 2 words within the page and see the whole page and the whole operation and plan and the plan that the company has. So maybe have the proposal, just give it to somebody you know, and get some feedback, or maybe even talk to some companies that are near you that have gone through our process. Maybe they can provide some feedback on regarding our process. So I think just getting all these additional information and having the pieces and advisors, I think that does give the company the best chance.
Thanks, Henry. We have a few questions. April, can you take that in terms of what leverage can companies use for buying, for doing M&A transactions, and using line of credit is not normally the right way?
So it's a big question, and it depends very significantly on what stage the company is at. We do finance acquisitions. Typically, we look to see what the impact, immediate and longer term impact of the acquisition is on the current financial situation. If companies venture backed and they've decided to do an acquisition, the first thing we look at is whether the price makes sense. We have a fairly good idea of what the multiple of the existing revenue is. In the software industry, for example, in SaaS, for example, people are paying between 6 and 8 times ARR. So if you're paying 12, chances are we're going to be reluctant. If the post-acquisition numbers don't suggest that the acquisition is going to have fairly immediate impact on overall revenue, we will probably look to share the acquisition cost with additional equity. I would say most of the acquisitions that we end up financing are either reasonably small or are being financed, at least in part, by the equity holders. But the key is to understand what the transaction, what the borrower wants, expects the impact of the acquisition to be. Whether you can, and that will determine if your line of credit has covenants. For example, it's based on your outstandings. You're not going to be able to use it. If it's just we typically do um, uh, loans that are, you wouldn't call it a line of credit, but it's the ability to borrow a chunk of money, but it's not based. The thing that's unique in our practice is most of our loans do not have any covenants on it. So it's not based on your receivables. It's not based on your any of your assets in the business. We are betting on the enterprise value. So we do bet on the enterprise value, and it's not exactly a line of credit, but it's a loan. I don't, Ashish, you have my companies have no E. Typically, you look at the multiple of E to decide how much a company can borrow. My companies don't have any E, so it's not a measure that makes any sense in our business.
Yeah. So on the great point on the debt side, from a bank's perspective, as a senior debt provider, it's primarily EBITDA and cash flow, and we look for collateral. And you're right. And I think somebody had asked the question, do you use your line of credit? And we'll say absolutely not. The line of credit is intended as a short-term use. It's your working capital. You certainly don't want to tie that up. And again, multiples, really depending if you're paying above and beyond what the combined companies can support, we're not going to be a fan of that. So there's one thing we look at is a opening day balance sheet in terms of, all right, what do the combined balance sheet and perhaps the combined income statement of these companies will look like? And there has to be an equity play, right? You have to have skin in the game. It's your baby. We're not an equity owner in the company. We're simply providing debt. So really, oftentimes, where we look at some of the smaller M&A transactions, where you're not looking at enterprise valuation, this would be typically if you're under, let's say, 20 million in EBITDA. More than likely, we're not going to look at enterprise value in those scenarios. So for the smaller companies, say between 5 to 10 million in EBITDA, it's going to be really crucial to take a look at the cash flow on what the companies can support and the underlying collateral that's behind it. But it was a very short question, but the answer is really broad. It's a case-by-case scenario.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Manish,
we have lots of questions coming. April, you want to take a crack at that?
I was just going to respond to Manish. I have a friend who runs a company called Republic Capital Access, whose whole business is to finance government receivables. And I would guess that with the right kind of lender, it's another non-bank lender, you could have, we've actually been talking about it because we lend to a lot of companies that have recurring revenue and trying to figure out what that's worth, which is very similar to what a government receivable is. I guess it can be canceled, but the backlog, you have a fair amount of confidence that it's coming. And I doubt that it would be attractive to a bank, but there are non-bank lenders for whom it will be attractive.
Thanks. Maybe we have time for one last question here. The question is essentially, how can a services company raise, what are the options for raising capital for a services company? I'm assuming they mean equity capital. Tom, if there's a services company looking to raise equity capital, how would you look at it?
So I would differentiate between software as a service and a professional services company. And I'm assuming the question runs through a professional services
company, not SaaS, but a
professional service company. Well, I think it's difficult. I think you'd have to make evident, and we've looked at things that maybe there's a tool deployment within context of a professional services offering that yields an unusually high margin, such that a company can scale and get the sort of return that would be sought after by other equity investors. But most professional services business, I believe, don't lend themselves directly to that, at least from the model, the way we look at the model. It'd be open to how others think of it.
Yeah.
I think there's private equity at a certain stage of development, but I think true venture is a different animal.
I think that's all the time we have.
We're done.
This was a great panel, and I think if people can reach out to all the panelists who will be more than happy to speak with you. And thanks everyone for for doing this, and I had fun and learned a lot. So I hope we continue the discussion among the panel and with TIE DC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us today, and I want to encourage everyone to stay with us all the way to the end, including participating in our comedy virtual hour. We should have a good time. It should be a mix of fun and laughs with our comedian, as well as a time to network with your fellow attendees. And with that, I'd also like to thank InnoLab Consulting for being our lunch sponsor today. And as we mentioned many times throughout the day, we'll be sending a Grubhub e-card to all those that joined us today. We'd also like to thank Aronson as our virtual platform sponsor today. And of course, we wouldn't be here without Harmonia and their platinum sponsorship. Thank you, Harmonia. I'd also like to thank our bronze sponsor, Navitas.
As enterprises strive to capitalize on disruptive technologies, they must be agile and ready to transform their services into faster, more responsive processes in order to meet growing demands and challenges. You must choose a partner that delivers transformation driven by expert talent. A partner that is robust yet personalized, disciplined yet flexible, collaborative, and innovative. Navitas provides a perfect combination of technology, people, innovation, and expertise. As experts in multi-cloud, with services in digital engineering, data, and artificial intelligence, we'll use the breadth and strength of our capabilities to help you improve speed, achieve desired outcomes, and reduce costs. As the demand for an agile infrastructure and dependence on the cloud rises, Navitas will guide and accelerate your multi-cloud adoption with an infrastructure that is supported by the new multi-cloud operating model with end-to-end automation. Designed for flexibility and to evolve as your demands grow, we use the most advanced technologies and our strategic roadmaps to modernize legacy applications and adopt digital technologies that will transform your business. To ensure operational efficiency at a lower cost, flexibility to work across multi-cloud platforms, and improve decision-making support, Navitas will help build a unified data platform with machine learning and advanced analytics that can help you garner timely insights and do more with the data. We believe accelerators are a powerful asset for any business, which is why we created our own. Since 2006, we've built Washington, D.C.'s premier professional services network that has a reputation for delivering quality that is fit for the future. We celebrate our team's talents and strive to enhance their potential, allowing us to attract and keep the sharpest minds with the most impactful skills. Our extensive network and vibrant culture are our greatest strengths and the foundation of our services, and we can't wait to welcome you into it. Innovation, delivery excellence, and expertise are the building blocks in Avita Solutions. We are committed to working side by side with you, personalizing our services and tailoring our processes to help you realize your visions and achieve your most challenging goals today and in the future. As enterprise.
And then I'd also like to take one more time to thank Bank of America, our gold sponsor.
We are continuously investing in our technology, processes, and people to combat ever-changing cyber threats. Cyber threats that can impact every region and industry, every business transaction, and digital interaction. That's why we use a holistic 5-fold threat management framework to keep information safe. Every stage is important, but it all starts with preparation and prevention. We're constantly analyzing threats and identifying ways that cyber criminals could strike, so we can take steps to close gaps, strengthen controls, and help stop cyber incidents before they happen. Detection and mitigation are the next layers. We continuously monitor networks, applications, and third parties for potential cyber activity. And we proactively engage and partner with law enforcement and help lead a broad industry coalition to make things safer. Should an incident occur, apply our well-rehearsed mitigation plan to ensure it's contained, and then we respond. Through constant preparation, our teams are ready to recover quickly so we and you can resume operations. Our threat management framework is ingrained in all we do and helps to strengthen the solutions that power your business. For example, our Cash Pro platform employs the strongest anti-fraud protection on the market. And we've added new commercial card security layers, including real-time alerts and greater user controls. We appreciate your business and your trust in Bank of America. In addition to keeping your information safe, we welcome the opportunity to talk to you about what you can do to protect your business and your customers.
Everything that you guys have been doing as well.
And then I, of course, like to thank all of our sponsors, everyone from our Platinum down to our logo sponsors to our media partners that made this event very successful. So thank you again to everyone.